this video, I want to talk about the benefits of intermittent fasting. Now, with intermittent fasting, it can be really easy to just view this as another diet fad, and that's very understandable because, let's face it, there's been many of those come and go, and people claiming that this is the new miracle diet, this is the new miracle cure, and all of a sudden a million books come out and people trying to get rich and all these sort of things, and it can be very easy to sort of get a bit numb and desensitized to that. However, I really believe that intermittent fasting is quite different, and that it is not a fad, and that it's in fact hardwired into our biology and is a byproduct of our evolutionary development. There's been a fair bit of study and science done into intermittent fasting over the last few years, and there's been a lot of talk about it. I'm going to post any relevant science in the information section below, because I don't claim to be an expert in this. I'm just someone who has thoroughly enjoyed the benefits over the last few years. So any of the science I'll post down below so that you can do a fair bit more research yourself. But basically what the science is showing is that when we go into a fasted state and we use up our sugar levels, our body, and I think our liver in particular, starts producing what's called ketones. And these ketones seem to be excellent fuel for the brain. And the science is also showing that intermittent fasting promotes the growth of what's called insulin growth factor 1, which studies have shown could be highly effective at preventing the aging process. And also, intermittent fasting seems to promote the process of neurogenesis, which is the creation of new neural pathways in the brain and in the body, as well as increase the production of our feel-good hormones such as serotonin and dopamine. And it may also highly encourage the process known as autolysis, which is basically where the body self-digests any superfluous tissues or any unneeded and dangerous tissues around the body that could possibly turn into disease tissues and things like that. There was a TED talk done by Professor Mark Mattson, which I'll put in the information section, which I thought was very exceptional, and he basically explains how, from an evolutionary perspective, intermittent fasting makes a hell of a lot of sense. And when you think about it, it makes sense logically as well. So basically, if we think of our ancient ancestors, the way we used to live as humans, we certainly didn't have food access available to us all the time like we do in this day and age. We didn't have supermarkets, convenience stores, fast food chains, all these sort of things that whenever we get the slightest hunger pain, we can just nip down the road and get whatever we want. Our ancient ancestors obviously didn't have this available to them at all. And in fact, they would have gone through many periods where there would have been a serious lack of food. And if we're talking about climate changes over the past many thousands of years, or they say humans have been evolving for millions of years, well, that means we've survived through ice ages and giant climate changes and earth changes and all these sort of things. And you could imagine that as we were on the move and as we became more nomadic, it would have been difficult at times to find food. So if our body was designed that when we don't provide it with sugars or with calories, that we instantly begin waning in energy and fatiguing and crumbling, then I think we would have been fairly pathetic at surviving, and we probably wouldn't be here today. I certainly wouldn't be here talking to you. So luckily that's not the case. It turns out that the body has actually evolved to be exceptionally resilient, and it seems that when we don't give the body food for a certain period of time, it views that as a challenge, and it views that as a threat, much in the same way as as the body responds to exercise. So obviously exercise is a stress on the body, and your body prepares for that event happening again by getting stronger and getting fitter. So if there's no food on the horizon, and we might go prolonged periods with no food, then the body, it makes a lot of sense that the body has evolved its own specialized adaptations for that. And what it seems like is that adaptation is the production of these ketones that seem to make our brain exceptionally sharp and exceptionally focused, and actually give us a lot more energy. And in many ways, this has been my experience when I intermittent fast and I go through a period where my blood sugar levels have gone have dropped significantly and my body wants me to eat, but I don't actually give it that food like I normally have for the most of my lifetime, my body responds by giving me signals that it wants to go search for food. So you think in that ancient past, what would we have done when we needed food? We would have gone foraging, or we would have gone hunting and things like that. And for those things to be effective in wild nature, you have to be on point, you have to be sharp, you have to be very focused, you have to be very aware of your environment. And so intermittent fasting seems to sharpen up all your senses, and it seems to heighten everything significantly and get your brain super focused, which is, in my opinion, a really cool side effect. So the benefits that I've found from intermittent fasting, firstly, is I've found that I've had a hell of a lot more energy. Now, the reason I put that down to is that we take for granted how much energy it takes to digest food. And when we digest food, especially heavy, dense processed food that's so common in our Western world, basically all systems are on high alert and full functioning power in order to break that down, because digestion isn't just simply a straightforward function of the body where you just put food in and this instantly turns to nutrients your body needs. No, it has to be broken down quite laboriously. It has to be absorbed, it has to be uptaken by the cells, but then there's the process of elimination and detoxification of any of those nutrients or any parts of the food that aren't needed and are actually toxic to the body, which, as I said, the modern Western diet is very high in toxins and very low in nutrients and water. So we are often very tired and very fatigued because we're eating morning, lunch and dinner. We're constantly putting our body under this stress. And I sort of, when I think about energy in the human body, I sort of view it as similar to kind of like how an iPhone works, in that the more applications you use and the more often you use them, the faster the energy in your iPhone is going to burn out. So if you've got all the applications on the screen at full brightness, you're going to run out of battery really quickly. It's the same with the body. If you're demanding all this high intensity work from all your organs and all the systems of the body all day long, you're going to be exhausted. And that's why I believe we're a culture that's so addicted to stimulants, because we're draining our energy, but we've got all this work we need to do. So we need to stimulate ourselves with caffeine and cigarettes and things like that. So I found that by eliminating that digestive stress, removing a large portion of the work that the body normally puts into digestion during the day, freed up so much more energy. And what that allows is for this process of autolysis to go deeper, which, as I said before, is a fancy word for basically your body scanning itself and digesting any unnecessary tissues around the body that are either not useful or actually harmful. And I found that fine lines on my face started disappearing after a number of months of intermittent fasting. I found that my eyes started getting clearer. I found that my nails started growing a hell of a lot stronger and faster, which was actually kind of annoying. Same with my hair. I found that this is no joke, I found that I went from like having to cut it every 5 weeks to like every 3 weeks. And this also made a lot of sense, because your body, with all this extra energy, your body doesn't waste that energy. It puts it to useful work for things that have been put on the back burner. So obviously having extra energy is certainly a good thing. And with this extra energy, your body can also detox a lot more efficiently, rather than constantly laboriously breaking down food. It has all this energy to clear out stuff that, toxins that might be stored in tissues that have all been put on the back burner. I also found that I had a hell of a lot more focus and a lot more clarity with my mind, and sort of a lot more natural urges to kind of move and get out and exercise and be amongst nature. And I've always wondered whether is that the part of my body that's kind of the primal part of my body that's saying get out there and forage for food and look for things, because we've got to remember we're still the same design as our ancient ancestors were. And so we've still got the same primal instincts. But I found that really good, because in terms of working and wanting to exercise, I found I have a lot more focus and a lot more energy to just get out and do things. I find that it makes me feel a lot happier. And this is because, as Mark Mattson says in that TED Talk, the body views fasting as a challenge, as a stress, and so it rewards you just like it rewards you with exercise. Like we all know that when we do that full-on workout, and it might be quite painful, but then after you just kind of like, I feel so good, because all the feel-good hormones, the serotonin and the dopamine are being released into the body, and you get that same thing with fasting. I found also that your fat levels drop quite considerably. I found it much easier to stay in shape and to stay lean without having to exercise as much as I normally do. I find that my muscle and all my tissues are preserved much better. I find I don't have to do weights or yoga as much to stay in the same shape. And I found also, this is a major benefit for me, that it changed my relationship with food. So rather than panicking if I didn't get my meal within an hour of being hungry or thinking I was going to die, I was able to learn to trust the body a lot more and realize, wow, this vessel I have is extremely resilient. It is extremely durable. I'm here today, alive, after millions of years of development, because the ancestors that pass on their genetics are extremely durable. So if I go an hour or two without food, or even 15 or 16 hours, I'm going to be absolutely fine. So you don't get that same like panic, like that same like, oh my God, I need food. And also I find that leads to a lot more emotional processing, because people use food as an emotional numbing agent, kind of like a drug. Because when we eat that, whether it be that high salt, high sugar processed food, the body responds like it's having a drug. So you get that kind of high, and if you're feeling any emotions or stress after a bad day, or any relationships in your life that are stressful or anything, food can develop into very much a numbing habit. And also we get that high, but we also get that food coma. So it kind of works as like a stimulating drug, but then it works as kind of like a sedative drug. So I found that one great benefit was allowing myself to feel my emotions more and have them actually process properly, rather than numbing them with food. So all of this obviously sounds incredibly amazing, and when you think about it, if all of these benefits were put into a pill and sold by a pharmaceutical company, it would make trillions of dollars, I reckon. And I can't guarantee that you'll get these results. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a science. There probably needs to be a lot more science done into intermittent fasting. But also, I don't think we need to wait for science to tell us what to do. There's no harm in giving it a shot, in trying it for 2 weeks. I really don't think there's any danger. As I said, your body knows how to be resilient. Your body knows how to survive. As I said, we've survived so many things as a human race. It is extremely resilient. And I think that's one of the fears a lot of people have, is that they're so conditioned to eat morning, day and night. And when we have conditioned habits so deeply ingrained, it can be very hard for people to let them go. It can bring up a lot of fear. And we're very much conditioned by our society. And I think this has had a lot of influence by the food industry, that we must eat regularly, that we must eat morning, lunch and dinner, and that we must eat in the morning like it's the most important meal of the day. And I now believe that eating in the morning is the least important meal of the day. But once again, this is only my personal results, and many other people are getting the same results. That's the thing. And I think intuitively, when people try it, it feels right, because it's been ingrained in our DNA by our ancestors who've passed this on. But as Mark Mattson says in his TED Talk, why is this not being promoted? It's probably because there's not a lot of money in it. I mean, you can go intermittent fast tomorrow for absolutely free. Pharmaceutical companies can't patent that. They can't turn that into a drug. They can't make money off you, which, let's face it, that's mostly what our Western consumerism culture is all about, making money. We're just commodities. So I think we need to take our health into our own hands and do some research so that and do some trial and error so that we know what's best for us and let our body guide us rather than our mind and what we've been conditioned to guide us. And also, breakfast must be a giant industry. God knows how many millions of dollars that makes. So I'm sure there's a lot of companies very much invested into keeping us eating breakfast, and that's why there's been so much marketing, probably I would call propaganda, pummeled into our minds for a long time, telling us that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But when you think about it, breakfast is just breaking your overnight fast. That's what it is, break fast. And so when you actually break your fast, doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be the morning. If you break your fast and you have breakfast at 12, it's still breakfast. It's still breaking your fast. The other thing that makes it really challenging is that most people don't know how to deal with hunger. And because we've conditioned our body to be receiving food so regularly, when we first take food away for a significant period of time, it can seem like the end of the world. And what I've found is that it generally takes at least 1 to 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, of consistent intermittent fasting for people's bodies to adjust. And I believe the science shows that it's our hunger hormone, ghrelin, I think that's how you pronounce it, ghrelin, actually begins lowering. This is a hormone that signals hunger, and after doing intermittent fasting for a period of time, these ghrelin levels in the body actually lower quite consistently. And that's been my personal experience, is that I don't get hungry in the same way as I used to. Like, it's kind of this feeling in my body, like I feel like my blood sugar levels are getting a bit low. I feel like I could really enjoy some food, but if I went another 3 or 4, 5 or 6 hours without it, I would be absolutely fine and I would be able to function perfectly. Whereas in the past, it'd be like that hangry feeling of like, I need food or I'm gonna kill someone. So in terms of how to actually intermittent fast, there's different variations of how to do it. My personal way of going about it is to stop eating at about 5 or 6 o'clock, because I think using your sleep period, if you sleep like 7 or 8 hours, using that to your advantage. Because if you want to fast for 16 hours, and I do recommend people maybe starting their fasting window at 16 hours, maybe less, but I think 16 hours gets you really, really good results. And maybe only just starting 1 or 2 days a week, starting off being gentle on yourself, or even just 1 day a week. Choose a day like Monday, for example, will be your intermittent fast day. So if you stop eating at 5 o'clock at night, and you make that last meal like quite a significant meal, so you're nice and full, and then you keep eating, you fast until the next morning at, say, I think 16 hours. My maths is terrible, but would 16 hours be 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock? I don't know. You figure it out. So what makes that much easier is that your sleeping window has been a huge chunk of your fast, so it doesn't really feel like you've been away from food for that long. And the other benefit is when you do eat, oh my god, it's a whole different experience of satisfaction when you're eating. Your taste buds are so much more heightened, your senses are heightened, and you enjoy the food and you digest it so much better because your body is seriously ready. It has done all its processes, it has detoxed, absorbed and digested and eliminated the last meal. It is ready to go again. The organs have been given a nice rest overnight. And so I find what works for me is to do about 16 hours 3 to 4 days a week. Sometimes I do it more. Sometimes I even extend it to about 20 hours, and I find 20 hours really, really effective. So generally I find your blood sugar levels start to drop at about the 10 and 11 hour mark, and that's when you start getting hungry. But I find that this period lasts for about 30 minutes, maybe 60 minutes, 30 to 60 minutes of hunger, and that's while your body is transitioning from a carbohydrate burning system to a fat burning system. And it's when it gets into the fat burning system is when these ketones start getting produced. So in that transition period, I find it can get a little bit messy. You can get a little bit tired, you can get a little bit nauseous, your head can spin a little bit, you just can't stop thinking about food, and you're just like, I'm not going to fucking make it, I'm gonna die. All these crazy thoughts start going through your head. But if you just breathe through that process, if you just trust your body, if you just sit with it, you find that once it's actually transitioned into fat burning mode, all of a sudden it's like something gets rebooted in your body and you're like, whoa, okay, I'm feeling the ketones, I'm like feeling so much more energized. This may not happen in your first week or two though. You actually might go through a really shitty detox. You might feel kind of pretty crappy the whole time. This is because your body's been given all this extra energy and your organs have given all this extra energy and time that they can finally start processing all these toxins that have been put on the back burner. But things that can make it a lot easier to get through that transition period from carbohydrate burning into fat burning are to maybe drink some tea or drink some water, go for a walk, do some deep breathing. If you're a coffee drinker, maybe have a black coffee. Just make sure you don't put any sugar or any calories into it. And I would just give this a go for at least 2 weeks, maybe 3, maybe 4 weeks, just to give it a go, just to see what your thoughts are. If you do that and you find no results, then you can come tell me that I'm full of crap, and so are millions of other people who are trying it, as well as the scientists who are finding all these amazing benefits, as well as our ancient ancestors who've used it to make sure we're still here. We're all full of crap. But it's just something that I really want people to experience, because I think low energy, addiction to stimulants, addiction to food, using food as an emotional numbing agent are things that are holding people back significantly. And what this does, I believe, embracing intermittent fasting, even if it's just 1 or 2 days a week, if you love it like me, you'll probably be doing it a lot more regularly, is that it will help you overcome fears. Because once you overcome your fear of it and your attachment to food and your fear of not having it, it kind of helps you overcome a lot of other fears as well. I hope this video has been informative. I hope it's inspired you to give it a go and to really challenge yourself. And if there's any questions about it, please fire away. And if you want to see any of our future videos, please subscribe to our channel, Seeds of Awareness. And we're on Facebook as Seeds of Awareness. And I'll see you in the next video.